You're tuned in to the only all-sports talk network in the Middle East, IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Check out the Israel Sports Radio store by clicking on the store tab on IsraelSportsRadio.com. Great items such as t-shirts, hats, books, and much, much more. Price does include shipping, and we do ship throughout the entire world. All major credit cards are accepted to make your shopping experience easy and convenient. So once again, click on the store tab on www.IsraelSportsRadio.com.
Live from Studio C at the Cherry Hill campus for the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, it's Sports Talk with...
Down goes Frazier! He scores! High fly ball into right field. She is gone!
Welcome. Another edition here of Sports Talk here on All Noise Radio, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. As always, you can chime in and feel free to state your opinion. Call in 856-330-4749, or you can send me a message on Facebook, facebook.com, and search for Sports Talk. Or you can tweet at me on Twitter at the Yossi, GTHEYOSSI, and the letter G. No underscores, no caps, no numbers, none of that. Just one straight long word. And before we get into all this NFL talk, before the Super Bowl, before I make my predictions, and before I tell you what a team should do in order to guarantee itself a Super Bowl victory, before we get into all of that, we're going to have on, joining us shortly, is going to be our NHL insider, WFAN's Islanders columnist Daniel Friedman will be on the Chabad Packer hotline very soon, in just a matter of mere moments here. Last night, for those who don't know, was the NHL Stadium Series. The last such stop in New York. Sunday was the Rangers and the Devils. Last night was the Rangers and the Islanders. Rangers, of course, victorious in both, 7-3 against the Devils as victors, and last night 2-1 against the Islanders. A couple of things that really stood out for me, and we'll get Dan's opinion on all this stuff and more in a matter of moments. A couple of things that stood out for me was the Islanders. Technically, he's their backup goalie. Now, Evgeny Nabokov, he started last night for the Islanders. He hadn't played in a game in almost a month. And you throw in the added effect, it's against the Rangers, it's outdoors, at Yankee Stadium. And the way he played was absolutely on top of his head. I mean, the game was 2-1, but it could have been a lot worse than that when you throw in the fact that there were a lot of wacky bounces that were happening up and down the ice and a lot of traffic in front of him. He played exceptionally well for the Islanders in the loss. And also another thing that I noticed was the fans were really into it. Everybody was wearing blue. You had the Islanders fans wearing their blue for their away, the Rangers fans wearing rather for the home. You had the Rangers fans wearing blue because for the blue shirts. I mean, it was really difficult almost to differentiate between who was a Rangers fan and who was an Islanders fan from the TV viewer standpoint. But when you watch the game and you look at and you're watching and you see how it kind of went along, you looked at the game and you saw the first period kind of started off slow and then it continued and picked up until you got a really, really heavily action-packed third period, and also second period was pretty good as well. And what really intrigued me was everything that they had going on, as you know, in the first game between the Rangers and the Devils, and how it all went on about. And there were some complaints by the players, of course, in that first game that was on Sunday. But this game, Islanders and Rangers at Yankee Stadium, it seemed to be something more, seemed to be a little bit more exciting. But just to make sure that I was seeing correctly, we're going to bring on right now our very own NHL insider, WFAN's Islanders columnist, Daniel Friedman. Dan, how are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Very good, Dan. So I just want to make sure that I saw what you saw, what you experienced. What was the actual game, the Stadium Series, the game between the Rangers and the Islanders last night? What was that like? What did it come across as in terms of the atmosphere, the environment, the fans? What was the feel outside there at Yankee Stadium, out on near the ice?
Well, it was a very exciting game, and the atmosphere was phenomenal. I mean, that's what really made it. The hockey itself wasn't terrific, but the atmosphere, just the energy in the building, you could feel the back and forth. Let's go Islanders, let's go Rangers. It just, it's something that you don't expect to see, and it's very exciting. It's Sunday was a little more fun, obviously, with the snow, but it still was just a wonderful environment just to partake. And even as press, it was just a little more of a loose environment. And they were giving out hats, and everyone's just more loose, more excited. It was just a real fun thing to be a part of, and it was a great game. The NHL hit a home run.
Well, you're talking about hats. Who gave Evgeny Nabokov, the Islanders goaltender, who gave him that idea to put that beanie on top of his helmet? Were his ears cold? What was that all about?
Well, we've seen other goalies do it in other winter classics and outdoor games, so it wasn't his. It's not something that he just came up with himself. It's been done before, so I feel like he just took a cue from them.
Now, you mentioned the snow in the first game that the Rangers played against the Devils on Sunday, but of course, this game last night, it was just the sheer brutality of what we in New York or in the greater New York metro area, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, what we feel as this polar vortex, just plain old cold. People from Minnesota, they're totally used to this, but here in New York and New Jersey and the greater metro area are not exactly all that used to that feel, that temperature, so to speak. Did that have any effect on the players once the game got started, or was it more along the lines of you get on the ice and once the game gets going, it all kind of falls into place? Well,
I mean, it did affect the players in the sense that the shifts were shorter, just because you have less, the air in your lungs is just not the same. But, I spoke to players about it. They said that the benches were warm, and in fact, one of the players said that he had to keep moving from spot to spot on the bench because his butt got too warm. So the benches were heated. But the shifts were shorter, and obviously with the, the elements, the ice was, because it was a little colder, the ice, the puck was bouncing a little differently. So in some ways that created some weird bounces and whatnot, but, that's really how it affected the players. I don't think they played worse because of the cold themselves per se. I think it was more just the puck and, again, like I said, the shorter shift.
We know in the game on Sunday between the Rangers and the Devils, after the game, Marty Brodeur complained very publicly that this was the worst ice he had ever played on, the worst ice surface he ever was a part of. What did, if the Yankees ground crew, do anything to improve the ice that you know of for last night's game?
I don't really know of. Honestly, the ice was worse on Sunday, I think, because of the snow. So you had that piling up every now and then. And not to say the ice was terrific for either game, but I'm actually going to skate on it in a couple minutes, so I'll tell you how it felt. But it was, it was weird. It was interesting. And I think, like I said, I feel like it was more the cold weather that created some of those weird bounces. But, that typically it's supposed to be about 26 to 28 degrees around the rink. And I think it was closer. It was hovering around 20, 21, 22. So, like I said, the puck was colder, and it just created some weird bounces. I think that's how it affected it.
When you were speaking to the players before and after the game, what was their reaction to playing in such an environment, to playing in such what the NHL bills as the Stadium Series?
They were excited. It was certainly a lot of them, especially the ones who come from U.S. Canada. Obviously, they know about the Yankees. They know Yankee Stadium. Some of the European players didn't really know as much, but they were still excited about it regardless. You speak to them, and they were honored to be a part of it, really. It's just, obviously, the one thing they'd say after the game is, they were excited to be part of it, but they wish the outcome was a little different. I think I speak for everyone in that locker room and the coaching staff as well when I say that, I'm sure that's how they feel. And that's something a lot of them echoed.
Well, talking to WFAN's Islanders columnist Dan Friedman. Dan, when you were walking around in Yankee Stadium for this game, you see all the fans and the excitement on their faces. What was the atmosphere between both the Rangers and Islanders fans? I mean, when you were watching it, you couldn't really tell anybody apart because you had the blue and the blue for both teams. But what was the atmosphere that the fans brought to the game that perhaps was different than any other regular season game?
Well, it was a little louder. Obviously, when you have 50,000 people in the stands, so it's louder. Obviously, I think it was still very much a similar split in terms of percentage-wise, Islander and Ranger fans, as you would in most Islander-Ranger games. It's funny, it was actually an Islander home game, but I think it was definitely like 65-35 or 65-40 in favor of Ranger fans. But definitely a little louder, and I think it was just more festive. I mean, it was freezing, but people were just really into it, and it just created for a fun, different atmosphere.
So how do you everybody keep themselves warm if it was that cold?
I don't know. I mean, what I did is I got myself 2 hot cocos, one to hold and one to drink.
Nice. Well said. We're talking here, the WFAN's Islanders columnist Dan Friedman. Last night's Stadium Series, the Rangers, the Islanders, of course, it ended 2-1. What type of mentality did it take for Evgeny Nabokov? He hasn't played in almost a month, not only to start a game after not playing for such a long time, but it's an outdoor game. It's really a different mentality. What do you think was going on in his head?
I don't really know, honestly. With these outdoor games, it's really fickle. It's you try not to get caught up in the atmosphere, obviously, but sometimes you can. And I can't. I'm not in any of these players' heads. I can't really explain it myself. I know if I was a player, I'm sure it would take me a couple minutes to get loose. But I can't really make much out of it, to be honest with you.
Well, you saw the game started a little slow in the first period. I guess it seemed like the players were just kind of trying to get their bearings on the ice. And then as soon as the last minute or so of the first period kind of was where the game really picked up. But both goaltenders, Henrik Lundqvist and Evgeny Nabokov, both played very well throughout the game. But one of the players that kind of stood out for me as well for the Rangers was their new acquisition, Kevin Klein. What did you see from him that he brings now in place of Michael Del Zotto for the Rangers blue line?
Well, for starters, I mean, he's a stay-at-home defenseman. He makes smart decisions, which is something Michael Del Zotto tended not to do. So in that sense, he's brought that to the Rangers, and they can feel a little better when a little more secure when he's out there. That he's not necessarily going to cough off the puck or anything, but he's just very smart, very steady. That's the one thing, and you don't notice him too much, which is a good thing when it comes to these guys. When it comes to these quiet, stealthy, stay-at-home guys, you don't want to notice them too much. They just make the right plays, and I think he fits that bill. I think he does that.
Well, certainly probably a guy that John Tortorella would have liked to have in the past couple of years. Dan Friedman, WFAN's Islanders columnist, as always, thank you for the time taking you out of the day. We know you're about to get on the ice there at Yankee Stadium before they pull it. So go out and enjoy yourself, and as they say, go break a leg.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care, Dan. That was WFAN's Islanders columnist Dan Friedman. Right now at Yankee Stadium, about to get onto the ice after the Stadium Series. From my understanding, there's going to be a couple of days where the ice will still be on the field at Yankee Stadium. Various leagues, teams, pickup games of a sort, if you may, are going to be skating on that ice. There's another a friend of mine, actually, who is going to be skating there tomorrow at some point with his team. And I know he's a big Brodeur fan. He plays goalie as well, so I wonder what it'll be, the ice, the conditions to play in the crease, in the net for him, and I wonder what he'll have to say about that after he plays. But when I come back after this short commercial break, you might want to tune in because I will explain what a team needs to do in order to guarantee a Super Bowl victory.
Honey, again you're sitting here sulking?
I hate my job and I don't know what to do to change it.
Get off the couch and go check out the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
The Connecticut School of Broadcasting? What's that? The Connecticut School of Broadcasting offers a career and lifestyle change through a broadcasting experience you won't ever forget. Log on to GoCSB.com to find out how a career in broadcasting is for you and not just the people you see on TV or hear on the radio. CSB focuses on many aspects of real-world broadcasting, and their knowledgeable instructors teach you through a hands-on approach so you're in the studio in no time. To find out how CSB can help you work in an industry you love, call 1-800-TV-RADIO or check us out online at GoCSB.com.
Why work 50 weeks a year for a 2-week vacation when you can enjoy your job every day?
Don't just sit there. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com.
Thanks, CSB.
Your computer is blowing up to the sounds of All Noise Radio, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Welcome back to Sports Talk with powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I am Yossi G, the sports rabbi. Before we get into the Super Bowl stuff, there's a couple things that have come my way as we approach the opening day, as we approach spring training, but more importantly, as we approach pitchers and catchers in just a couple of weeks. When you look at some of the teams, the Mets are in shambles, the Yankees are old, but these teams, I mean, we know what's going on with them. The question, though, is what is going on with the Philadelphia Phillies? The team itself seems as if they are also giving a run for the money, so to speak. They're giving the Yankees a run for their money in terms of age, but the other thing, unlike the Yankees, that seems to be with the Phillies is that they find it hard to take a long look in the mirror at themselves to see what is indeed and what is truly in front of them. And it seems like they're stuck in about 5-6 years ago past as to what this team really has. I mean, they've made very few off-season moves. You've signed Marlon Byrd among others who have not really had any, so to speak, real mention or real wave of what the team can actually be. There hasn't been any strong, big names and whatnot. But even though that has been the case, it has still been a very strange or a strangely eventful winter. You had the weighing of their option to the Phillies have been to trade their all-star outfielder Dominic Brown. They have also been actively shopping their closer Jonathan Papelbon. At the winter meetings, Roy Halladay made an announcement to retire as a Toronto Blue Jay, no less. 3 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, the Phillies landed a new TV deal that starts after the 2015 season. Their longtime broadcasters, Chris Wheeler and Gary Matthews, are going to both be replaced this coming season. Carlos Ruiz has been re-signed. Marlon Byrd, as I mentioned, was signed a couple of months ago for a 2-year, $16 million deal that brought him from Pittsburgh across the Keystone State here to Philly. And they also signed starting pitcher Roberto Hernandez, who used to be known as Fausto Carmona, and he's going to compete with Miguel Alfredo Gonzalez, Jonathan Pettibone, and Ethan Martin for one of the final 2 spots in the starting rotation come spring training. And they're also bringing back Bobby Abreu. Remember, this guy, he's a familiar face in Philadelphia. They brought him back after taking a year-long sabbatical from Major League Baseball and apparently tearing it up in the Venezuelan League. They bring him back, invitation to spring training, a minor league deal. And the fans have to remember, and of course, if you want to jump in on the conversation at any time, 856-330-4749, or send me a message on Facebook, facebook.com, and search for Sports Talk with the Sports Rabbi. And of course, you could also send me a Twitter message. Tweet at me at the Yossi G. That's TheYossi, and then the letter G. What many people don't seem to understand is that Ruben Amaro Jr., the general manager for the Phillies, did not sign Bobby Abreu, who will be 40 in a couple of weeks, didn't sign him to be an everyday outfielder. He signed him to be potentially, possibly, to be a left-handed bat that comes off the bench that was sorely needed, that was sorely missed, that they did not have last year. That's why they signed him. So for that, for that addition, in terms of what Ruben Amaro was thinking, I understand. Was this the only possibility that they had? According to Amaro, that's what he was on with Mike Missinelli on WPEN a couple days ago, and he said that that really the only option that they had was to bring in Bobby Abreu. Do I agree with that? Hey, I mean, Amaro gets paid to do this job, so you would figure that the GM knows what is and what is not out there. But when you take into consideration the fans, the people who pay the dollars, the people who shell out the bucks to seat their tuchuses in those chairs at Citizens Bank Ballpark, when they look at the Phillies, they see an aging team. They see a team that still thinks it's 5 years ago. And now you're going out and you're signing still yet older players, or relatively older players. And then you go and get a guy like Bobby Abreu who will be 40 in a couple weeks. It almost begs that even though Abreu may have been your only option or your best option, maybe you take a chance on somebody who's, say, half his age. Maybe a 22, 23-year-old guy, unproven, won't cost you a lot. Maybe you bring up somebody from the farm system. Why go out and get a guy like Bobby? Why go out and get a guy like Abreu who's 40, and you're just fanning the flames that the fans, when they look at the team and they see an old team, you're fanning those flames now. You're adding fuel to this fire. You're adding, the suspicion that the fans have all along, which is you're just putting together an old roster. The question then becomes why? Now, of course, when you look at what the Phillies have been doing to try to promote their own image, you have the players, some of the newcomers have been going out to various events, public events, fan events to show their face, show themselves out there, to kind of counter that whole "this team is too old" mantra that the fans seem to have taken up. Right now, according to BaseballReference.com, the Phillies have had the third oldest team in baseball last year, age of 30 years old, behind the Yankees and the Dodgers. They didn't get any younger. They added Bird, who's 36. They added Abreu, who'll be 40. And right now, they have two players who were not born in the 70s who are projected to be on the roster as everyday starters next year. That would be Ben Revere, their center fielder, and Cody Ashley, the third baseman. Jimmy Rollins is 35 years old, and he's coming off career lows in runs scored, home runs, slugging percentage, and on-base percentage. And Rollins also had the worst WAR, the worst wins above replacement of his career of 0.2. Chase Utley, he's okay, but the entire season and the rest of his contract that the Phillies re-upped with, everybody's going to be holding their breath because of knee problems that have plagued him the last 4 years. Ryan Howard, he's probably the biggest wild card of everybody because of how little he's played over the last 2 years with the Achilles injury and the knee injuries. Well, yeah, Howard has lost weight this offseason, and he's gung-ho for spring training, according to reports from Ryan Sandberg, the manager. But it almost seems like this team is just getting older. I mean, the Phillies seem like they're their own prisoners to sentiment. The Cardinals, the St. Louis Cardinals, they moved on from Albert Pujols after the 2012 season. They went ahead and won the NL pennant last year. The Phillies have shown interest in parting with their longtime franchise players, but they haven't actually gone out and proved that. There have been reports of the, willing to, wanting to, but in actuality, they signed Jimmy Rollins to a 3-year, $33 million contract in 2011. They signed Ryan Howard to a 5-year, $125 million deal. This was even when they already knew about the knee injuries, and they re-upped with Chase Utley last year after they should have just let him walk. The team there's a lot of question marks with them, and really we don't know what is going to be, what's going to happen, where they will stand going forward. When you look at a team like the Yankees, for example, when you take them and you see that, even though they are an old team, but they've gone ahead, they've gone out, and they sign players. They spend the money. They take the chance on young guys. And in this case, it was with Masahiro Tanaka when they brought a 25-year-old unproven guy from Japan, give him all that money to play in baseball without having thrown a pitch. That kind of belief in a player, you could say, it's warranted, because last year he went 24-0 in Japan. He's only 25 years old. So even if he's even if in the worst case scenario he turns into the next Kei Igawa for the Yankees or the next Hideki Arabu, at least you gave it a legitimate chance. You gave the team a legitimate opportunity. It's not like you're signing a guy. It's one thing if you would sign Masahiro Tanaka as a 35-year-old or a 34-year-old who just went 24-0 last year in Japan. It's another thing to sign him when he went 24-0 and now he's 25 years old. Talking about the Yankees, A-Rod apparently was offered a coaching job in Torrington, Connecticut for the Torrington Titans of the Future Collegiate Baseball League. How about that? The coach for the team said that, although A-Rod, rather it was the general manager, Joey Abbott, said that we can only offer him $5,000 for the season. The donut station across the street has offered him free coffee and donuts for the entire season. Now, remember that A-Rod cannot be a part of Major League Baseball this year because of the suspension, but that doesn't mean he can't be a coach. Doesn't mean he can't help others to help themselves get better. In a statement, Dan McNamara, he's the Titans manager, he said that I see Alex as being more of a hitting coach. I've been in professional baseball for the past number of years as a player and coach, and I can teach the players about getting here. A-Rod can show them the way to the big leagues. It's priceless. To be honest, there's a lot of bad going on in his life, and we're trying to give him some good. Oh, let's put it this way. I don't think Alex Rodriguez firstly needs the $5,000. Well, actually, maybe after all the lawyer's fees, he might need those $5,000. But I don't think he's going to Torrington, Connecticut, to be a hitting coach for the Torrington Titans of the Futures Collegiate Baseball League. It just doesn't seem like it's a possibility, but it's really it'll be kind of neat actually if he does go. Imagine that. You're there, you're in the FCBL, the Futures Collegiate Baseball League, and you're part of the Torrington Titans, and here comes day one of training camp, Alex Rodriguez jogging down the field. This guy is your coach. Yeah, he took steroids. Yeah, he's a liar. Yeah, he's suspended from baseball for a whole season, but it's still Alex Rodriguez. I mean, his name still does resonate with some weight to it, even though he is a proven cheater or an admitted cheater to the game. He still has some insight to the major league level and what it takes to get there, outside of cheating, that is. I mean, he's still a talented guy. I don't know if he could still play third base at an everyday high level, but he is a talented individual. He has God's gift to play baseball, and it would be really, really cool to see him give some of that knowledge, invaluable knowledge and information over to the youngsters there in Torrington. When we come back, I'll get into a little bit of what the Yankees need to do to turn the season around, and then I will break down for you a couple of fail-safe methods for winning the Super Bowl. You're listening to Sports Talk with the Sports Rabbi here on All Noise Radio, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
It's been 48 years Connecticut School of Broadcasting has helped place thousands of people, just like you, in exciting careers in radio, television, and the new media. At Connecticut School of Broadcasting, our hands-on approach is different. It's designed to have you spend less time in the classroom and more time in the studios. From the first day, you'll work with state-of-the-art equipment. Learn by doing from our team of industry professionals who come from their studios to ours. The best part about it, you'll learn it all in a matter of months, not years. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has a network of 12 campuses from Massachusetts to Miami. Remember, it's never too late to love what you do. So do what I did. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO. Step into the fast-paced world of the broadcast media. Day and evening classes begin soon. Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Get trained and get connected now. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to GoCSB.com.
All Noise Radio. The noise. The noise you can't ignore.
Welcome back. Sports Talk with the Sports Rabbi here on All Noise Radio, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. A little MC5 for you right there. As always, 856-330-4749. You could chime in in the conversation, get your voice heard here, or you could send me a message, facebook.com, search for the Sports Talk with the Sports Rabbi page, or you could also send me a Twitter message. Tweet at me at the Yossi, Gyossig, on Twitter. And before we get into some more baseball talk, got a message here from Zach in terms of hockey and fighting. He says, eliminate stage fighting by having a number that each player is allowed to fight before that player gets suspended. This will make certain players pick their spots to fight. That's an interesting way of approaching things, Zach. There's also obviously this whole question in the NHL, what to do with stage fighting, or what to do even with fighting as a whole. Keep it, leave it, take it out of the game, remove it. It's obviously it's a question that has been argued upon the last couple of years, especially with the whole concussion thing going on in pro sports, and it probably will continue to be discussed in forthcoming years. But I don't see it really going anywhere anytime soon. This is actually one of the more smart ways, so to speak. It's a good idea. I understand where you're going with this, Zach. A good idea with it. That way there won't be that much goonery, so to speak. Pretty much eliminate the staged fighting aspect. And if it is a staged fight, well, guess what? Either that player is going to get suspended because that player's over his number of fights that he's allowed, or it'll get you one closer towards that suspension, and the player will then pick. You really will have to start picking your fights well. Really, this has come to a head because of what happened in Vancouver between the Canucks and the Flames, the Calgary Flames, a couple of weeks ago, where the game started off with a full-line brawl, all 10 players getting involved. Then it was John Tortorella being suspended for 15 days, which culminates in 6 games for the Canucks because he tried storming the Flames locker room after the first period. So there's a lot going on. A lot of reason for what all this discussion is about, but then it comes to some of the issues of, well, how do you exactly judge for a player if he's fighting? Does that mean he has to drop the gloves? What happens if somebody just comes and tries to pummel him and he just wants to fight back because he doesn't want to get pummeled to the ice? Is that considered a fight? I mean, all these details would have to be worked out, but I certainly like the idea of putting a number, maybe make it, like 3, you're allowed to fight 3 times during the season. Then again, does that become an arbitrary number? Is that a number for everybody? Is that a number for certain players, certain lines? Does what you would call a goon, does he get more ability to fight than, say, the star player? Or does he get less than, say, a star player sticking up for himself? All these things would have to be discussed and would have to be figured out, but it certainly is an interesting take on the whole fighting aspect and how to bring the NHL to a forefront where people will no longer say, oh, I went to a hockey game and a boxing fight broke out. Talking about really neat hockey games, Ben Scrivens from Edmonton last night, 59 saves, a new NHL record. The Oilers shut out San Jose in Edmonton, and that kid was playing ridiculous, redonkadonk. He was making saves where he had no business being. He was playing absolutely incredible hockey last night. And the Oilers finally, after many, many times of having their goalies play pretty well, they actually got a few pucks to go into the net on the other side of the ice to give their team the victory. And while we're still on the hockey subject, I'm getting in a text here from a buddy of mine from Moshe back in New York. He says, there's this whole kicking motion conundrum, kicking motion controversy that's been going on. And for nobody, just to recap, a couple games ago, the Islanders and the Blues, they played a game where Thomas Vanek, the Islanders player, redirected a Franz Nielsen shot on goal. It went into the net. It wasn't counted upon review because they said the War Room in Toronto said that there was a kicking motion. But according to the replays, it did not really even seem like there was a distinct kicking motion. The question that Moshe wants to know is, does the distinct kicking motion need to be readdressed? I think it does. But I think the question goes even farther. Does the NHL need a war room to begin with in Toronto? If you have a play that happens, everybody and their grandmother sees the play occur. In this case, let's take this goal that was disallowed. The players know it went in legally. The opposition know it went in legally. The fans in the arena see it either live or on replay for farther, review of their judgment, and they see it going legally. And then you're going to tell me that there's going to be a guy up in Toronto who's nowhere near the game, and he's going to review it and deem it illegal when it's at the best it was there wasn't clear evidence on the play whether it was moving or not. So you got to go with what was called on the ice, and what was called on the ice was a goal in that specific case. The kicking motion thing, I think, unless you actually see a player move his foot forward, what they call a distinct kicking motion, anything short of kicking the puck visibly with your foot moving forward in, when you were a kid, you played kickball, like that sort of a motion, anything short of that should be considered a goal. A war room in Toronto, I would argue that you don't even need a war room, but that's a whole separate topic to get into another time. Getting back to the Yankees and what they have done as a team. Now, when you look at what, last season, the Yankees finished in a tie for third place with the Orioles, and they have a lot of holes to fill once they got into the offseason. Andy Pettit's gone. Mariano Rivera retired as well. Robinson Cano left for the Pacific Northwest. And Curtis Granderson moved over across town to the Mets. The Yankees signed Jacoby Ellsbury, Brian McCann, and brought Carlos Beltran back to New York, this time in the Bronx with the Bombers. There were also smaller signings, though those, of course, were the big splashes. They also signed Brian Roberts, who went from Baltimore to New York. They brought in Kelly Johnson. They also brought in a left-hander named Matt Thornton Thornton, who's probably going to replace Boone Logan in the bullpen. The Yankees signed Hiroki. They brought back Hiroki Kuroda, and they also signed the biggest name in the offseason, Masahiro Tanaka. The questions that, of course, are going to go and remain unanswered until the season actually, gets a little bit underway is, what's Mark Teixeira's wrist going to look like? Is it going to be back from an injury-plagued year? Derek Jeter, what about him? He only played in 17 games last year. He's hoping for better health. We know that A-Rod's not going to be there. David Robertson is going to try to replace Rivera, but there's no putting on Rivera's shoes and moving forward, assuming that it's going to be Rivera. I think the Yankees fans have, and for the most part, they know that they've been spoiled by a guy like Rivera for the last, 18 years or so. Robertson's going to try to do his best, but probably won't be like Rivera, and that'll be a place where Yankee fans are going to try to they're going to have to, come to terms with reality with what every other team in baseball has to deal with, that their closer is never going to be perfect. Right now the Yankees have some question marks. Of course, that's on the right side of the, in the infield with Teixeira and Jeter and how they're going to respond from coming back from their injuries, as well as their age. Beltran, his age. McCann and Ellsbury, they'll probably help for a few years with the Yankees. And then, of course, we'll be talking about these guys in the same fashion that we're talking about right now, Teixeira and Jeter. And what will be really cool to see is what happens with that third base slot for the Yankees infield. Because don't forget, the Yankees also signed Scott Sizemore today. He agreed to a minor league contract with the Yankees, giving them another option for replacing A-Rod at third. Sizemore, just barely 29 years old, only played in 6 games the last 2 seasons because he injured his left knee that required surgery twice. He hit .216 with 6 RBIs in 21 spring training games last year with the Oakland A's, and then only had 1 hit in the regular season before he got hurt again and was out for the rest of the season. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there with the Yankees. There are certainly some players that the Yankees could use. You think of a catcher to back up McCann. I think of Kelly Shopek. He's pretty solid on the market type of a guy who can play admirably for a backup position. For somebody to perhaps back up Derek Jeter, think about Stephen Drew. It's a very thin position in terms of who's available, who's talent, worthy to come to the Yankees, and Drew could help out. It's all, right now I think he'd be a perfect fit for a post-Tanaka signing with the Yankees, because it will leave the question of what happens to Derek Jeter if he gets injured on the side, because you have a very viable option in Stephen Drew. And of course, Michael Young. There have been some advocates for him, his versatility, he's got leadership, but also, again, don't forget, he's the type of guy who not a lot of people like for whatever reason, because he doesn't get on the field that often. He played with the Phillies, and he was okay, but he's not like a sexy name. So having him on the team, I don't think that would go over so well with the Yankees, but it certainly is a name to keep an eye out on and see what happens, where he goes from here. I promise when I come back, I will talk about the Super Bowl. Don't go anywhere. You want to hear what your team that you are rooting for, that you have vested interest in, must do in order to guarantee Super Bowl victory.
You know, our jobs occupy more than half our waking hours. Shouldn't we be doing something we love? Call Connecticut School of Broadcasting at 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to gocsb.com. Since 1964, Connecticut School of Broadcasting, with a network of 12 campuses from Massachusetts to Miami, has helped place thousands of grads as DJs, sportscasters, entertainment reporters, behind the scenes in audio and video production, every aspect of the broadcast media. Connecticut School of Broadcasting has trained men and women of all ages and backgrounds in a matter of months, not years. Learn by doing from area radio and TV pros. Call 1-800-TV-RADIO or log on to gocsb.com. Remember, it's never too late to love what you do. Day and evening classes begin soon. Get trained. Get connected now.
Your computer is blowing up to the sounds of All Noise Radio, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me?
Welcome back. Sports Talk with the Sports Rabbi here on All Noise Radio, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. As always, 856-330-4749, or you can send me a Facebook message, facebook.com, and search for the Sports Talk with the Sports Rabbi page, or you can send me a tweet at Twitter. Check me out at my Twitter handle, at the Yossi, GTHEYOSSI, and the letter G. Super Bowl Sunday is around the corner. The big game, the hot enchilada, the big one, the big dance, whatever you want to call it, the day that we eat guacamole, the day that we love to sit in front of the TV and watch commercials. Well, that, of course, and the game as well. When you look at the team, I mean, you break it down a couple of different ways, but when you have these the indoor Super Bowl, outdoor Super Bowl, you want it indoors, you want it outdoors, who knows how, what, when, where. I say like this. Football was meant to be played in any element, in any condition. If you play it like that in the regular season where you have really hot, muggy, humid games earlier on in the season and you have snow bowls later in the season, games where it's frigid temperatures, who cares? Have it for the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is made for fans. It's made for executives. It's made for everybody. You want to go to the game and you want to enjoy it in comfort, not be cold? Okay. You'll shell out the money that you could afford for that. You'll go to the game and you'll pay for that suite. You'll pay for that box. But if you're a regular fan and you just want to go to the game and enjoy it and be part of it, well, you'll pay whatever. You don't care to sit in a box. You want to be part of the atmosphere. You're not an executive. You don't necessarily care to be indoors. You just want to be there. So I think going outdoors to play in such an environment like MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey, I think is fine. The question, though, becomes, in terms of cities for the future for outdoor games, just because New York, New Jersey has it does not necessarily mean that Boston should have it, that Philadelphia should have it, that Chicago should have it, because when you have it in a state, let's say like Arizona, or you have it in South Florida, or in Tampa Bay, or in Southern California, even though these places are not, so to speak, as busy as New York is, it gets offset because it's warm. So you can do almost anything you want. When you have the game held in a cold weather stadium, in a cold weather city, you have to take into consideration that a lot of things that you can do in that city, a lot of things that you're able to accomplish, that you're able to see, that you're able to have a good time with in that town is only in the warm weather. Rarely is it that in the cold weather you can do that as well. New York is the exception to that. Because although the game is in New Jersey, most of the events are being held in New York. And New York is just that big. It's just that awesome. It's just that amazing that it is a 24/7, 365 city that you can find things to do there. Summer, spring, winter, fall. Doesn't matter the time of the year. Doesn't matter the time of the day or night. There is something to be done, something to be experienced, something to be had in New York City. That is why, for the Super Bowl to be in New York in the cold weather, I have no problem with it. Because from this fan standpoint, you could have the fans who can afford to sit in the warm boxes, to sit in those boxes, those executives, they can go there. You have the fans that just want to be part of the game, that just want to experience the Super Bowl, that once-in-a-lifetime thing for them. They can sit outside if they so choose. Because they don't care about the weather. They just want to be there. But it also falls back into the city as well. When you look in terms of where it's being held, cold weather, only one city, in my opinion, can handle the cold, can deal with it, because it is that awesome and has that many things to do and see, and you will not be bored. And also, it could handle everything. It could handle the media. It could handle the influx of tourists. It is the top, I think it's like the 7th or the 8th most touristed city in the world. I don't think Boston makes the top 10. I don't think Chicago cracks the top 10. I don't think Philadelphia cracks the top 10 either. That's why New York is special, so to speak, in this regard. Do it every year in New York? No, that's stupid. Maybe what you can do is like have a rotation every 8 to 10 years. Have it again in the greater New York, New Jersey area. You have your domes, you have your warm weather, you do that rotation, and then once you finish with that full rotation, now you go back to New York. You throw in the New York, New Jersey, you throw in East Rutherford, New Jersey, you throw in the MetLife Stadium into that rotation of every year. You have the warm weather cities, you have the domes, retractable roofs, and New York. Talking about the cold weather, Super Bowl tickets, I don't know if anybody has checked it out. Super Bowl tickets have increased in price now that the National Weather Service is calling for temperatures for kickoff to be in the high 30s. The average ticket has gone up to $2,200 plus. I looked Monday afternoon for giggles at what StubHub was carrying, and the cheapest ticket on Monday afternoon was $1,685. Right now, the cheapest ticket is about just a hair fraction over $2,000. It's like $2,009 for the cheapest ticket. Roger Goodell came out a couple days ago, said he doesn't want he's thinking of pondering the idea for no more points after touchdowns, for no more extra points, potentially. What does this mean for kickers? It means, well, quite frankly, they have one thing less to do, means their job security is a little less, means they're on a shorter leash. Maybe even punters might be able to, do field goals. If you can have a punter who could also do kickoffs, who could also kick a field goal, that's like the dude. That's going to be the new job. Roger Goodell pulls out points after touchdowns. I think that is the beginning of the end for kickers in the National Football League. I don't think he should do that because we like having people employed. So what if it's an almost automatic? Almost doesn't count except for horseshoes and hand grenades, my friend. Kamesh, don't pull the extra points. Now, for the matchups in this game, key matchups that I find between the Denver Broncos and the Seattle Seahawks is Marshawn Lynch against the Denver defensive line. You're going up against Terrence Knighton and the likes of Sean Phillips. Can Marshawn Lynch go into beast mode? Can he go to the end zone and grab that bag of Skittles? Can he be the guy that takes the pressure off of somebody like Russell Wilson and allows the offense to flow in a very smooth and manageable fashion? The Seattle defensive line, which is led by Chris Clemens in another key matchup, going up against Denver's backup offensive line consisting of the likes of Orlando Franklin, Manny Ramirez, and Chris Cooper. Can Seattle harass Peyton Manning enough, get to him often enough, knock him down, take him off of his rhythm, Can they get to him enough against this patchwork offensive line, or will the offensive line do its job in protecting Peyton long enough that he can throw those quick passes, long enough that he can make that extra move and throw the long ball? Can they protect him enough where he finds a groove and gets comfortable in the pocket? And lastly, in the key matchups, I find it is Russell Wilson against the Denver defensive backs that are led by Champ Bailey and Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie. Doug Baldwin and Golden Tate are the go-to wide receivers for Seattle, but Denver has very good cornerbacks in Bailey and Rodgers-Cromartie. That is going to be a fun matchup to watch, especially if Marshawn Lynch can't get going against the Denver defense, because then it all falls onto Russell Wilson on his arm and his legs to get the job done. The X factors in this game, Percy Harvin. I mean, when you look at a team like Seattle, I mean, Denver had a week and a half so far to prepare for Seattle. They have video, they have images, they have game film on everybody, really, except for Percy Harvin. He's only played in 38 snaps in 2 games all season due to injury and hip injury and concussion. And you know when he comes into this game, he will probably be very explosive on special teams as a returner and in the slot as a receiver. So when Denver approaches the Percy Harvin conundrum, it is twofold. It's one that we know what he can do, so we have to prepare for that explosiveness, and we have to make sure we tackle and we don't miss tackles. The other thing is they don't necessarily have to pay that much attention to him because Seattle got to this point pretty much without him. Don't get fooled by that, because that's when Percy Harvin will burn you. That's where Percy Harvin will explode for a touchdown. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Percy Harvin, how he will play into this game, and what sort of role he will have, if it will be just an honorary role, so to speak, or if he actually will be a go-to guy. And lastly, Denver's running backs. They are the X factor for Denver, because they are ranked 15 in the NFL during the regular season, but they rushed for over 150 yards in both playoff games. The question is, if Monty Ball and Noshawn Moreno can replicate their output that they had in the first couple of games that they had in this postseason, can they replicate that against the Seattle defense, which is anchored in the middle by the likes of Bobby Wagner and Bruce Irvin? That will be the key matchup, because if they can get something going against Seattle's defense, then that relieves a little bit of pressure against Peyton Manning. That will be on Peyton Manning to perform. A little bit of pressure on Peyton Manning to get the ball downfield. So it's that time that everybody wants to find. I've been getting all these text messages. What the heck is this? How do we ensure that our team wins the Super Bowl? Well, it's quite simple, actually. ESPN, the magazine, put out a whole bunch of different scenarios, and a couple of them that I found interesting was that you want to get the ball, you want them to start with the ball in the second half, because 38% more points were scored in the second half than the first half, and quite frankly, that's because your offense is in a more of a flow. You need to score points now because it's the second half of the football game. It's no more feel each other out. And the other thing is that 8 out of the last 12 Super Bowl winners had more penalty yards than the loser. So don't worry about getting penalties. Hold, chip, block, do whatever you can to get the advantage. You get called for the penalty? Deal with it. Next week will be an awesome show. Stay tuned and have a great Super Bowl weekend.
All Noise Radio. Powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. All Noise Radio is an internet radio station that's fully produced by graduates of the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. From modern rock to old school hip hop, country to classical, news, talk, sports, and more. It's the noise you can't ignore. Log on to allnoiseradio.com. Fire up the station. Find out more about your favorite jocks. Get the latest CSB news and more. Plus, you can take All Noise Radio with you on the go for free. Just download the Live 365 app to your iPhone, iPod Touch, or BlackBerry and search All Noise Radio. Check out tomorrow's broadcasters today at allnoiseradio.com. Powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. All Noise Radio. The noise.